Hello everybody, welcome to episode 119 of Show Today we'll be going over the Fortuneteller Baba saga of the original Dragon Ball manga. Now, this saga starts off with us learning about who Fortuneteller Baba is, which I discussed in the last video. And then we see as everyone ends up heading over to, well, actually they end up building a group of 5 people. They end up, it ends up being Puar, Yamcha, Upa, Goku, and Krillin. We end up going to Fortuneteller Baba's place. So once they get there, they see that there's a big line outside, and they see a bunch of like tough-looking dudes, and they end up like presuming that this must be a difficult thing to get into. This must be difficult for to get Baba to tell you your fortune, or not tell you your fortune, but like tell you where something is. Divine. But yeah, so but then we see as like a rich family walks out, and they're all happy and joyous. Nothing looks like it happened to them. Then we see as the tough guys go in, they come out bruised, battered, and like not happy at all. So like they're like, whoa, what's going on here? So they pull up, and Baba reveals to them, yo, you have to pay 10 million zenny to have me tell your fortune, or you have to fight my champions. And with that, we see that they obviously do not have 10 million zenny, and that's why the rich people walked out unscathed, because they had the 10 million zenny. But yeah, so then they obviously have to agree to end up fighting the champions. And they presume it's going to be easy peasy. Like, they expect everything's going to go easily, and nothing is going to really go bad, no one's going to get harmed. But, so we see as Bob is like, alright, follow me along, we're going to go to like my little battling area. So she ends up taking him to this little like stadium over oasis, essentially, because it's out in the desert. And so we see as she brings out her first champion, Count Dracula. And we see as a little bat comes flying in, and it poofs into a full-on person. And so out of the, I guess, dragon group here, not the dragon group, but like Goku and friends, we see as Krillin selects himself as the first competitor. So what we ultimately see is Krillin ends up fighting this dude, and he's getting put on the ropes. He is not doing good. And ultimately, what Dracula ends up doing is hopping on Krillin's head and sucking blood from his head. And this causes Krillin to get all woozy and stuff like that due to blood loss. And so we see as he is trying to fight, but ultimately failing because his blood is getting drained from him. And this Count Dracula continues to do this until ultimately he's like, yeah, you got to surrender. And Baba tells him that, yeah, we'll give you a blood transfusion just if you surrender. And Krillin ultimately ends up surrendering, getting bandaged up and getting his transfusion. So then the next champions are sent in. The next champions are Puar and Upa. And we see as they actually have quite a plan planned out because they were like conspiring beforehand. And ultimately what ends up happening is Puar ends up, well, actually Upa is the first one who does it because Dracula comes over there to fight him, and Upa releases a garlic stench from his mouth. And then we see, I can't remember exactly what it was that Puar did, but Puar ends up warding off away, and then Upa like T-poses, stands in a cross, and he's like, I'm the demise of all, because Dracula says, what are you doing? He's like, I'm the demise of all vampires, a cross, and Dracula goes, Wah! And ultimately ends up getting beat. But yeah, so, this reminds me of a scene from, like, that, it's a Spanish movie, where it's like, the dude holds up a cross to fight the vampire. He's like, oh, my ancestors were Jewish, and then the dude ends up whipping out a swastika. I don't know, I think the clip's probably been everywhere. I bet everyone's seen that clip, but yeah. So, then after that, we have the first competitor by Baba successfully defeated. So, then the next one ends up coming out, and Yamcha is set up to fight this one, because they want to save Goku for last. He's the big secret weapon. But yeah, so, dude ends up coming out, and Baba's like, yo, he's out here, but we don't see anyone. Well, what's this guy doing? But yeah, so they're all confused and everything, and ultimately we see that this guy is in fact the Invisible Man, and he doesn't end up fighting with, well, he ends up fighting with Yamcha, but you can't see him, so Yamcha's trying to fight him via the use of sound, like the movement of air, to hear it and then know where he is and fight him based off that. However, Baba starts singing to cancel us out, and Yamcha's getting beat up pretty bad. But then ultimately Krillin gets the plan. He's like, yo, we need to go get Bulma and Master Roshi. So he sends Goku to go do that. Ultimately, Goku ends up coming back with Bulma and Master Roshi, and Krillin ends up saying they're in like a very precarious position. They end up putting Bulma in front of the stage, has Roshi stand looking at her, and raises his head up. And then what Krillin does is he rips off Bulma's like top, revealing her breasts, and this causes Roshi like a hemorrhage, arterial bleed, nosebleed, which blasts out and hits the Invisible Man, coating him in blood after this. And then Yamcha can now see him. He prepares to do a Wolf Fang Fist, a Roga Fufuken, and the dude surrenders. He's like, nah, I ain't doing that. So Then next we see as the third champion is up to fight, and Yamcha's gonna fight him this first time, and they end up going to like I can't remember exactly what the name of the area is called. It's called like Devil's Arena or something like that, and they end up walking over there, and ultimately they see is that there's two big devil statues with their tongues sticking out, and they must find out the tip of the tongues. But below all of it is acid that will burn anything. We see as Baba demonstrates this by dropping a slab of meat in there, and it poofs away. But yeah, so then we see as Yamcha starts fighting the next next competitor, which is the Mummy. And the Mummy is a very powerful fighter. We see as he goes up against Yamcha, and Yamcha's actually able to knock him off of the tongues at one point, but he ultimately ends up using... No, is this Yamcha who does this? No, Yamcha ends up getting beat up pretty bad. I don't know. Yeah, he did. He did at one point. Yeah, he was the one who knocked him off, and then the Mummy ends up using his rope, not rope, but his, crap. Bandages to get back up. And so we see this, and ultimately Yamcha is defeated by the requirement of saying mercy because the Mummy was going to throw him into the acid, but Yamcha's like, I can't die. So he ends up calling mercy and walking back up, wounded with his pride hurt. So then it is time for Goku to get sent out. And Goku ends up fighting the Mummy, and yes, there's a big contention, not really a bit of contention. We see as Goku lets the Mummy get his hits in first, and Goku's like, alright, it's my turn. He puts the whooping on the Mummy. So the Mummy is ultimately defeated. Then we see his Baba's like, alright, well, I'm ready for your next opponent now. The Devil. Then she whips out the Devil, and they end up pulling up, and they ended up, I don't know, no, they weren't fighting in Devil's Arena, I don't believe. I don't remember the exact environment of this fight. I don't believe it was Devil's Arena, but I don't think it was like the last stadium where we see the 5th champion fought. But yeah, so we see this, and the Devil pulls up, and Roshi reveals, hey, yo, this dude is super powerful. He's a winner of 2 Tenkaichi Budokai. So he's like the real thing. And we see as him and Goku start fighting, and ultimately he ends up like pulling out a bunch of random stuff, but then he pulls out the evil beam, or the beam of evil, whatever it's called. And this, what it essentially does is it causes the evil within someone's heart to swell and develop and grow until it ultimately kills them by bursting their heart. And obviously this would work on any other person, because not one person doesn't have a single iota of evil in their heart. Besides Goku, because he uses the beam on him, and Goku's like, what was that supposed to do? Because it does nothing about Goku, and everyone's freaking out. They're like, yo, he must be absolutely blank of mind or just that pure of heart. But yeah, so then we see as Goku ends up fighting him, he ends up, the Devil ends up pulling out a trident, essentially, trying to fight Goku like that, but then Goku ultimately ends up beating him pretty fair and square. So then after that, Bobbitt's like, all right, I got my 5th and final champion. They end up going outside. Well, actually, they don't end up going outside. The 5th champion pulls up where he has this like cat mask on, and he's like, I don't know, I want to go outside to the full-on good proper match. So they end up going outside to the arena, and the fight commences. Now we see as they're going pretty well against each other. Goku's fighting well and all of that, and we ultimately see that the masked fighter has to pull out a Kamehameha, which indicates who he could possibly be. And Roshi's like, yo, I wonder who this could be. And Goku mentioned prior that this man had a very good smell to him. Like, he couldn't really describe it to Krillin, but he mentioned to Krillin that, yo, this dude smells good. Like, he smells happy. And so we see this. Ultimately, he ends up pulling out the Kamehameha. And Roshi keeps deducing this down a little bit more and a little bit more. And then, ultimately, he ends up fighting Goku. Goku ultimately ends up getting above him. He ends up beating him down to submission almost. But then what the masked fighter is able to do is he grabs Goku's tail because he knows Goku's tail is his weakness. And off of this, Roshi's like, okay, there's no way it couldn't be him. And so he deduces down that this is in fact Son Gohan. But we see as he has a halo above his head, so we know that he's not actually here in the corporeal sense. And so we see that as Gohan continues to fight him, he starts bashing Goku over and over again on the ground with his tail, but ultimately his tail ends up popping off, and Goku gets mad, and he's like, alright, I'm finishing this fight. And then Gohan calls out mercy, and then ultimately he takes off his mask and reveals to Goku that he is in fact Grandpa Gohan. And Goku runs up, jumps on his head, and is just loving him all. It's such a cute, adorable moment. And we see as they're kind of talking and everything, and Gohan reveals how he is in fact not alive, but he is here to on a one-day lease, essentially, that Baba can permit, and which we see in later Z with Goku coming to, I think it's the tournament that happens like at the beginning of the Buu Saga. But yeah, so we see this, and he kind of reveals what he's been doing. He shows how he is kind of a woman's man, like Roshi is, by mentioning how there's a bunch of pretty female souls in the afterlife, which is allowing him, or I guess making it more enjoyable for him to stay dead. But yeah, and like one time he cracks a joke about how he can't wait to see everyone else. And yeah, so we just get to see that reunion with Gohan. Goku ends up showing Grandpa Gohan how he still has his 4-star ball and everything. And it's ultimately just a really sweet moment and everything. But ultimately, after this, since the fifth champion has been defeated, Baba is willing to reveal Goku's a divine for Goku and tell him where the location of the seventh Dragon Ball is. And we end up seeing that it is in fact in a car moving around the area. And this car is under the ownership of the Pilaf gang. So we see as Shu, Mai, and Pilaf have ultimately ended up putting the ball in a case so that it cannot be detected, while also putting up like a reconnaissance drone to see and watch the fight with Grandpa Gohan, so they can ultimately go and capture the Dragon Ball by learning just more about Goku. Kind of like what Dr. Gero did with the androids, just learning their weaknesses and stuff like that, and just learning about them, reconnaissance. And they learn, Goku's tail is his weakness, but Goku doesn't have a tail anymore, so Goku ends up flying over there without knowing the Pilaf gang is there. He ends up jumping on top of their car, he looks down, and they freak out and everything. He's like, wait, hold up, were you the type of people that tried to kill me? Or the people that tried to kill me? And ultimately they end up talking and coming to the deal that if Goku beats him, then he gets their Dragon Ball, but if they beat him, they get all 6 that he has. So they end up whipping out these mechs that they have, and each of them look to be pretty powerful, but Goku actually ends up quickly beating Pilaf's own mech pretty fast and knocking him away. So then we see as they're like, okay, we gotta resort to our Megazord form. So they end up combining, stacking on top of each other, forming this big mech, which ultimately is once again easily defeated by Goku in a I believe he uses a Kamehameha here to beat the towering one. Yeah, he does. He blasts the side of the big mech, as you can see there. Not really well, but yeah. So after this, they end up jumping down and then turning into like this ostrich form since one of their mechs has been destroyed. So Mai ends up hopping on the back of the ostrich and they shoot a missile at Goku, but Goku ends up deflecting and everything and going on in usual Goku fashion. So after this, Goku, he had deflected back at the machine, so they are stuck, and they actually give him the Dragon Ball now. Goku actually ends up taking Shu's clothes, because when they were in the 3 robot form, they had tried to take Goku's tail. They ripped his pants off and tried to take his tail, but his tail wasn't there, so Goku ended up escaping really easily. So Goku takes Shu's clothes, or Shu or Soba, and also their Dragon Ball. So he comes back to the area where Baba is. Also, I forgot to mention, but Baba is the sister of Master Roshi. That's not really important to the story. That's how like Roshi knew about her and all that, even though Fortuneteller Baba is obviously renowned for a lot because they got people coming to Oasis from everywhere. But yeah, they are siblings. Baba is the older sister of Roshi. But yeah, so we see as Goku comes back to Baba's place for a moment, show that they got the Dragon Balls, and then he heads off to Karin Tower. And as he heads off to Karin Tower, we see as he finds little Upa, and he ends up putting all 7 Dragon Balls together, summoning Shenron or Shenlong. And I love every time they summon Shenlong in Dragon Ball. Like, I don't know what it is, especially original Dragon Ball, because it feels so like impactful. Like the panel is so sick each time. Like, hold on, let me find it here. I just love the panels of Shenlong getting spawned. Where is it at? The original. Oh yeah, look at that. Oh crap, can't really see it well. Look at that right there. Is that not sick? I love the panels of Shenlong getting spawned. Yeah, he ultimately ends up getting Upa to ask the question, can you revive my dad? And Shenlong's like, that's easy work, that's light work. And so he ends up reviving Bora. Bora hops out of his grave, and the two are happily reunited, ending a struggle, or essentially a time of sorrow that seemed to possibly have been permanent. But yes, that was such a lovely reunion. Then we see Goku ultimately ends up heading back off, and we see as Bora is like, if you can do anything in your life to make me proud, just try to be like Goku. Try and be pure and kind each day. But yeah, so we see as he goes back to Baba's place once more, and everyone gets to talking, and we see as we kind of reveal where everyone's going to go. So we see as Yamcha has been accepted by Master Roshi to be under his tutelage, so Yamcha is going to learn under Master Roshi, and Krillin's going to stay with him, obviously, as well, and Goku announces how he's going to go off and train. He wants to stay with Roshi and train, but Roshi's like, I can't train you anymore. If you want to get better, you got to go and explore the world and learn about. And so, ultimately, he's like, okay, I'll go do that. And they mention how they're training for the next Tenkaichi Budokai, the 22nd Tenkaichi Budokai, which will happen in 3 years. So, we see as Goku prepares to head off and go on an adventure, and he calls to Kinto-un, but then Roshi's like, wait, no, stop. You have to run everywhere, swim everywhere, traverse everywhere with your own body for the next 3 years to train Goku up and get him more and more powerful. And this is obviously very useful training for Goku, so Goku ends up running off, as he always does, and heading on his next adventure. And we see then as Baba's like, they end up looking for a way to get back to the island, where Baba ultimately is like, kind of a crappy teacher and not follow after your own your rulings. So Roshi's like, you know what, let's all run. So they end up running all the way back to get the Kame Sennin house, or Master Roshi's island. But yeah, so with that, we then see as a 3-year time skip happens, and we head on into the next arc. I love this arc so much. I love the Fortuneteller Baba Saga. We get to see Bora and Upa reunited, and it's such a beautiful story. Like, I love to see as ultimately good triumphs. I know good triumphs always in Dragon Ball, but still, it's such a heartwarming story with Upa. And that's honestly why Upa is one of my favorite characters. But the next arc, my goat's first appearance, Tenshinhan, will be arriving. I cannot wait to read the 22nd Tenkaichi Budokai arc, because it's masterclass. Literally, I'd say it's either my first or it's probably my first. It's probably my number one favorite arc out of all of Dragon Ball. I love the 22nd Tenkaichi Budokai. It would be very close to the Demon King Piccolo saga, but like, I think because the Demon King Piccolo saga can be slow at points, but the 22nd Tenkaichi Budokai was like hit banger after banger after banger in my opinion. But after I reread them, I'll have to reevaluate them, and I'll probably do a video just kind of ranking what my favorite sagas were, because reevaluation, like, I really like the Pilaf saga a lot more than I had prior. So yeah, I guess I'll probably do a ranking of those one day. But yeah, that's all I really have to say about the Fortuneteller Baba saga of the original Dragon Ball manga. That's all I really have for episode 119 of Show Review. So thank you very much for watching.